So it's summer 2021, and it's beginning to feel like the question, so are you going back into the office, has become the new which vaccine did you get? So why all the buzz? I'm Jenn Barkley, I'm the VP of Field Marketing for Cybersource at Visa, and it's really hard to scroll a social media feed without coming across a post or a paper on the topic of the great return to work. And in my 15 years of professional marketing experience, I've come to appreciate just how valuable it is to have some guiding principles or best practices to really guide change and make sure that we navigate our way through a successful campaign, for example. A few of these marketing principles can double as pretty good advice for how to be part of a high-performing team, whether your organization is staying remote or going back into the office fully, or some combination of the two, some hybrid combination where many of us will find ourselves moving forward. And the team at Prezi has invited me to share my thoughts on this and share those principles. And with that, I'll just go ahead and jump right in. The first one is a golden rule of sorts for marketing: know your audience. So before we create any single piece of marketing content or even begin to launch a campaign, it's really paramount to make sure we understand who our target audience is. What are their interests, their needs, their pain points? How and where do they like to consume information? And in a work environment, your audience can include clients, partners, vendors, but for the purpose of today's discussion, think of your audience as your internal teammates and stakeholders. Take the time to really understand and consider what success looks like for them, just as you would consider it for yourself, what their pain points are, how you can help them, and how you guys can help each other be successful. Some of the ways to do that are to create cohorts. So once you know what those partnerships need to look like, create a working group, or sometimes they're called tiger teams or diamond teams, SWAT teams, although that sounds very aggressive. But it's essentially a group that is organized around common goals and business outcomes instead of just setting up your meeting cadences or your group chats or your channels around org structure. So it's like a project team, but it's more permanent and long-term to help you establish things like cadence and collaboration that'll work across many different departments and employees who might be located in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world. Establish identity. So this one's kind of fun. Once you have determined the most effective configuration of groups for your team, give each person in the team or cohort an identity or a nickname that isn't just their job title. Job titles can be really ambiguous. In marketing, we have roles like campaign manager or content manager. Both of those are really critical roles, but they can mean a lot of different things. So to take a spin off of Nora Ephron's quote, "Everything is copy," in 2021, everything is content. And so if you have a title like content manager or content director, then it's almost as if you own everything, but that's not really the case. So think about making each person on the team kind of like you were making them a character in a TV show. Give them a personality that aligns with what they're to be known for in the group. It could be Chief Keep Us All Organized Officer for a project manager, or the piggy bank for a finance rep, or something. No matter how silly it is, it's okay to have fun and to laugh. And it'll keep everybody on the same page as well for who's responsible for what. And then third in Know Your Audience is embrace all verts. So what I mean by this, diversity and inclusion, as we all know, is a really important thing in the workplace. And I think this also extends to being inclusive in work styles and personalities across extroverts to introverts and most of us who fall somewhere in between. I recently finished reading the book Quiet by Susan Cain, and the subtitle was The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And she points out something in her book that I absolutely noticed while working virtually, which is how easy it is for the more quiet, introspective types among us to fade into the background when we are in a remote environment. It's really easy for some people to struggle with having their ideas heard. And you've probably noticed yourself when you're on a video conference or call that if you don't speak, your video or your profile avatar gets pushed to the back of the gallery by design, especially if you don't have your camera on. And so virtual meetings aren't going anywhere, and for those who might not be returning to the office, it could be harder to stay as involved with those teammates who may begin to be co-located again. And so this is something to be mindful of. And what you can do about that is to make an effort to actively manage the meetings you host. Be inclusive of everybody on the call. Think through your agendas and what everybody's contribution is. And this is just a good best practice in general to make sure that you don't have a bunch of people on the call who don't necessarily need to be there, but that's where the cohorts can help. But you can also do things like pause and ask for feedback via the chat function to give people more time to gather their thoughts, or poll the attendees using some sort of a polling functionality. And really there's no need to be on live meetings 8 hours a day. You can really get creative and think about hosting things like silent meetings or brainstorming sessions using online notes tools in the cloud to exchange ideas in over a certain amount of time to really give everybody, no matter where you fall on the spectrum of outgoingness, time to collect your thoughts and then to exchange ideas in a very thoughtful manner. So great marketing campaigns will reach their audiences via multiple channels and multiple touch points to increase the number of people who engage and the variety of people who engage. And so consider doing some similar things like that with your audience at work. Number 2, look to the cloud. So for this, take some time to consider the tools you use each day to do your job. Are you using them how they were designed? Are you using a toothbrush to hammer in a nail, for example? Having software and tools that are designed for the job at hand is really, really critical in being effective. And when folks are remote or in different places, effectiveness is going to be really, really key. When your team is split out, using the cloud to make sure everybody's on point, that they know what the latest update is, action item, all of the comments and the communications are in one place instead of spread out, amongst different chats or emails. It's really great. And then the workflow itself, if it's designed for the type of job that you're doing, it really takes some of the guesswork out of the processes and how about, doing your job and collaborating and partnering together. Even tools that are in the cloud that are for file hosting and file sharing, sometimes we tend to lean into those and build our own kind of bespoke processes or just make folders for everything. There's so much more potential out there, whether you're a marketer, finance, HR, legal, sales enablement, really great tools. Sales enablement, having the right tools there is really important. So many good examples. If you haven't already adopted the right one, then make sure that you take some time to think about doing it. And if you do have a tool or a cloud-based solution to help your team function together, this might be a good time for you to revisit it as everyone's returning to the office and think about, can you make updates? Or are you making updates to your team, like establishing a cohort or some other working groups that can be reflected that weren't there before, that you can really change your implementation or your setup structure? That might be one way. Is everyone properly trained and fully adopting the tools and the processes? Adoption is key, and at the risk of stating the obvious, if not everybody is using a tool, you really can't get the most from it. And are you taking advantage of all the cool features or functionality, or are you still using other tools in combination with it, like email or chat, or putting things in a presentation file as a plan instead of really leaning into your setups? That's tough because now people have to go to more than one place to kind of figure out what's going on. So again, it tends to defeat the purpose. So take some time as your teams are resetting to really squeeze all you can out of your investment in cloud-based tools. Third, get creative, of course. As Marketers were hyper conscious that our audiences, like ourselves, we are the audiences in marketing, each other's marketing, are bombarded with millions of bits of information day in and day out. And our attention spans are short, and it seems like they're growing even shorter. And so every day it becomes more and more difficult to stand out. And if you are a remote employee and your colleagues are going back to the office, and they'll be together in person again, you may find yourself feeling like an outsider looking in. But even then, for all of us, it is really important to consider how we collaborate as content and the way we do that as content, and really trying to find creative ways to share with each other, to engage one another through things like fun presentations or communications, subject lines that stick out instead of getting lost in the shuffle, and encourage each other to do the same. I didn't know about Prezi Video until the team reached out to ask me my thoughts on the hybrid workplace, and I can say it's definitely been a refreshing change of pace from working in slideware all of the time. And it's easier because there's templates and you can add video and there's no editing, which is great because this video would have never gotten made if I was expected to edit anything. But there's a lot out there if you just take the time to look and see what might work for your group and your team based on what you're trying to accomplish. And then make it memorable. So these same messages that we get bombarded with, just like creativity can help things kind of rise above the bar and get remembered, so can your messages. So think about what you want your team and your stakeholders to take away from every interaction or every communication or every presentation. It probably won't be, hate to break it to you, probably won't be the whole everything you shared in the 30 slide deck at 9-point font or whatever we try to squeeze in nowadays. If people need more details, have them ready, they'll ask for them. But really think about highlighting what are the 2 or the 3 or the 4 things that your audience will actively be able to recall if you ask them in the morning, what are the 3 most important things that I shared about yesterday, that they can actively recall it. Otherwise, it's all for naught. And this can improve mutual understanding of each other's work styles, goals, and ideas, and that just makes for better collaboration. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, have fun. So I lead an amazing team of marketers internationally, and we are spread out across 4 continents and 6 time zones, and yet we work really, really closely together. And even when we are in the office, we are apart just because of the distance. Some of us are co-located, but as a team, very, very spread out. And so every month and a half or so, we make time to do things together virtually. And many teams, probably yours, did this during the pandemic when everyone was remote. But just because some folks might be trickling back into the office, don't lose that sense of connection with those who might not be in the office at all, or at least in your office. So we take turns planning things that we can look forward to. It could just be coffee or tea where we talk about Netflix binging, or music styles. We've done personality quiz shows for each other. Our APAC marketing lead led that one. We've had a Parisian tour guide come in and give us an interactive virtual tour of Paris. Our European marketing lead organized that a few weeks ago, and our Latin America marketing manager is the next one. And I think it's going to get a little spicy if I can tell from the gifts that are being shared in the group chat, but it's definitely something to look forward to. So these are just a few of the ways, just a handful of marketing principles that could really help you in this new hybrid environment. But regardless of where you're going to be physically located, one thing is this for sure for all of us, and that is that we are no longer the same people that we were when we all had to pack up and go home a year and a half ago. Take the time to reflect on how your work style may have changed, or what it is that you learned about yourself in your time at home, what things you might want to do differently or embrace more of as your work situation might change yet again. For me, there were things I really loved about working from home, like being able to spend more time with my young kids. And there's also things I'm looking forward to doing again when I'm back in the office, like not having to spend so much time with my young kids. I love them, but man, it was a lot. And then also, don't lose the empathy that we were all able to experience during our time working remotely. No matter if you have kids or elderly parents or a sick relative at home or some combination of all of these, there were so many moments that were delightful to witness, despite how hard everything was. And that was just witnessing the level of compassion and understanding for each other's life situations that I'd never really seen before in the work environment. We're having really important conversations around diversity and inclusion and mental health. So it's been a hard road, but there's a lot of goodness to come if we really make an effort to continue to bring it with us. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to these ideas. Hopefully they helped, and thank the team at Prezi for inviting me to share my thoughts. And I wish you all happy working.